Hello, and welcome to the April 18th, 2018 edition of Shrewsbury Matters, a monthly show that presents a different perspective on the town's politics and problems. My name is John Lukach. Slide 1 outlines the topics for today's show. If we can put that up. So the first two are going to be news updates on two important local issues that are being discussed now. And the main topic is the water rate article that I have arranged to have placed on the town meeting warrant for the annual town meeting, and why town meeting, it should say town meeting, should have to ratify new rates. So let's get to the updates first. First update is the marijuana issue. So should town meeting vote on April 23rd to ban commercial recreational marijuana operations in Shrewsbury, or should it vote to regulate it? Well, until the Finance Committee's April 12th public hearing, I was undecided on the question. But then at the hearing, it was reported and confirmed that even if town meeting voted for a ban, one company that has already obtained a medical marijuana approval in Shrewsbury would also be able to sell recreational marijuana in Shrewsbury. So in other words, they are effectively grandfathered. In other words, even if town meeting votes to ban commercial recreational marijuana operations, this one company can and almost certainly would sell recreational marijuana at its facility. Thus, voting for a ban will not result in a ban. This one company will almost certainly start selling recreational marijuana in Shrewsbury legally, despite the ban. So this means that Shrewsbury will still have to deal with the negative effects of commercial recreational marijuana operations on public health and safety. In my opinion, since voting to ban will not result in a complete ban, special town meeting should defeat Article 1, the ban, and then it should definitely approve the second article, which places tight regulations on commercial recreational marijuana, particularly the part which would limit the number of marijuana businesses in town to just 2. And the 2 would include the grandfather company. So here's the bottom line. If town meeting approves Article 1, banning commercial recreational marijuana, we will still have one commercial recreational marijuana operation in town. If town meeting defeats Article 1 and approves Article 2, the town would then have 2 commercial recreational marijuana operations, one of them being the grandfathered medical marijuana operation. That would be just one more than if we banned it outright in Article 1. And whether there are 1 or 2 commercial recreational marijuana operations in town, Shrewsbury would have the same public health and safety issues to deal with. And it also seems to me that if town meeting votes to ban, we would effectively be giving the one grandfathered company a local monopoly, and monopolies are bad. So what I plan on doing is voting against Article 1 and voting in favor of Article 2 to regulate the marijuana operations. The second update is on unaccounted water. At the March 10th meeting of the Finance Committee, the water superintendent made a surprising announcement. He claimed that there had been a substantial reduction in unaccounted water, from the 32 to 35% range of past years to only 22% in 2017. I challenged this claim at the meeting. I asked for supporting evidence, and I immediately followed up. And then I met with the water superintendent and the town manager on March 22nd. The supporting evidence they provided was flimsy, consisting of a one-page summary. And when I brought the summary home and checked the numbers, I found an obvious mathematical error. Based on the numbers in the summary, the correct figure for 2017 unaccounted water was 26.2%, not the 22% claimed at the public hearing. And since no good explanations were given at this meeting as to why even this limited reduction in unaccounted water would have occurred, it is doubtful that this reduction to the corrected 26.2% is accurate. So poor management of the water system by the selectmen with regard to unaccounted water continues, just as it continues with contaminated water problems and with the setting of water rates. And so now we'll get to the main topic of today's show, which is the new water rates and why town meeting should have oversight over setting new water rates. As I said, my petition article would require town meeting to ratify all water rate changes approved by the selectmen. It says simply, quote, all water rate changes voted by the selectmen in their role as water commissioners must also be approved by a majority vote of town meeting before they take effect, end quote. So if approved by town meeting, the selectmen would still initiate and vote on new water rates, but if approved, this article would require that new water rates voted by the selectmen would also have to be ratified by town meeting before they could go into effect. So why is town meeting oversight of water rate increases necessary? Quite simply, because the selectmen have continued to charge rates that are inequitable and unfair to many residential customers and some commercial customers. And their continuance of those unfair and inequitable rates has continued years after there was no longer any valid reason for the higher residential than commercial rates. And the new rates announced at the Selectmen's April 10th meeting are still inequitable and unfair. Higher residential than commercial rates at all consumption levels were appropriate back in 2002, when the town's average daily residential consumption was substantially above the state guideline of 65 gallons per day. Since the town has been well below 65 gallons for several years, the selectmen should have been adjusting new rates to reduce the differences between residential and commercial rates. But instead, they have maintained and even increased those rate differences over these years after these large rate differences could no longer be justified. So, why should residential and commercial rates be more equitable than the new rates? Well, some of the reasons are there is no longer a valid reason for them to be so different. Second, many residential customers with legitimate needs for more water would stop being penalized. Third, commercial customers of 0 to 5,000 gallons would stop being penalized. And fourth, the largest commercial customers would stop being subsidized. Fifth, almost every other town in Massachusetts sets all their residential water rates equal to or less than their commercial rates. Absent a compelling reason, of which there is not, Shrewsbury should do likewise. Sixth, there are other rate structures that would substantially reduce the differences between residential and commercial rates and even equalize them. They would generate the same revenues and they would not increase total residential water bills. So the latest rates are but a continuing example of the selectmen's poor management in setting water rates, and is reason enough for town meeting to have oversight over the rate setting process. But the process by which they finally arrive at the latest new rate structure is itself even more compelling evidence of the selectmen's poor management of the rate development process and the need for oversight. What do I mean? Well, these recently approved rates are radically different from the rates that were developed and presented by Pioneer Consulting last fall and then approved by the selectmen at their November 14th meeting, with a planned implementation date of January 2018. Unfortunately, the selectmen did not then understand a major impact of those rates. Those rates would have resulted in roughly half of the town's residential customers having higher water bills than commercial customers with the same consumption. That is, residential customers of more than 10,000 gallons would have had higher bills than commercial customers under this rate structure. Many residents would have complained, and that would have been a serious political problem for the selectmen. After I communicated this fact and other problems with the November rates to the selectmen and the town manager, they realized their mistake and they announced that they were delaying implementation of the new water rates, ostensibly because they needed to update the billing system first. Even if this excuse were true, it would again show that poor management of the selectmen. After all, no good manager would agree to implement new rates before ensuring that the billing system would be ready to support them. But in fact, Updating the billing system was not the real reason for the delay. They were using the additional time to investigate and agree on a new rate scenario that would substantially raise the consumption level at which residential customers would have higher bills than commercial customers, in order to minimize that number of people who would be out there complaining that their bills were higher than a commercial customer of the same consumption. So now let's go to slide 2 and 3 and show how the rates were changed to accomplish this. Slide 2 shows the Selectmen's original approved November 14th residential rates and their new April 10th residential rates side by side, and then it shows the differences. So note the large 90-cent decrease in the residential rate for 0 to 5,000 gallons consumption. It's the only rate decrease from November, whether residential or commercial. And I'll explain why they did that in a minute. So now let's see slide 3. Slide 3 shows the Selectmen's original approved November 14th commercial rates side by side with the new April 10th commercial rates. And as you can see, there's a large increase in the 0 to 5,000 gallons range from $3.50 to $4.75. Now, if you combine the increase in the commercial rate with the decrease in the residential rate in that consumption range of 0 to 5,000 gallons, what that does, okay, that enables now when you calculate the water bills for people from 0 to 25,000 gallons, you now will see that the residential water bills will now be lower than the commercial water bills for consumption up to about 25,000 gallons or slightly more. And that's the reason why they did it. It's a completely artificial way of setting the rate structure so that they don't upset residential customers. But it's wrong. They're rigging the water rates to solve their immediate political problem, so they don't have to explain to half the population why they're paying more than a commercial customer. But these revised rates are still unfair to many people and even some businesses. For example, one cannot possibly justify the huge disparity between the residential and the commercial rate at 0 to 5,000 gallons consumption. If you recall from those slides, if we can go back to slide 2 just for a second. Slide 2. So the new residential rate at 0 to 5,000 gallons is $2.10. And if we go to slide 3, we will see that the new commercial rate at 0 to 5,000 gallons consumption is $4.75. So what we're seeing there is that the commercial rate at that low consumption level is $2.65 higher than the residential rate. Now, there is no difference between a residential and a commercial customer at that rate, those ranges, unless the commercial customer or the residential customer happens to have a water meter that's 1 inch or larger. If they don't, there is absolutely no difference. They're getting the same service. So why would you charge a commercial customer twice as much for the same amount of water? It just doesn't make any sense. It's only been set up that way to solve the Selectmen's political problem. So, what does this mean? This means that the latest rate setting process, starting last August when the consultant was engaged, to accepting his rate recommendations, to realizing the errors or the problems that those rates were going to cause, to developing new rates that still aren't equitable, this is just another major example of poor management, and by itself should be sufficient evidence to justify the need for oversight in the rate setting process. And approving my water rate article will do exactly that. So, the new rates continue to be unfair to many customers and subsidize others for no good reason. They are a continuing good reason why oversight is needed. So let's take a closer look at the new rates. So let's go to slide 4. Slide 4 shows, and what I should preface this by saying is if you go online and access the town manager's report on this subject of April 10th, 2018, on page 6, you will see that there are 2 rate setting objectives that he talks about. One is a conservation-based rate structure that encourages the efficient use of water by charging customers a higher rate as their water consumption increases. It's fairly obvious. The second one is they're seeking equitable rates. So how do the new rates shown on slide 4 measure up to these objectives? Well, let's take a look. Are these rates conservation-based? Well, the residential rates certainly are. The dollar rate increases at each of the higher consumption ranges are quite large. In each step, there's an increase of more than $3 per thousand. And the difference between the lowest residential rate at the lowest consumption and the highest residential rate at the highest consumption is $11.90 per thousand. These step increases definitely will encourage water conservation. But now look at the dollar rate increases at each higher consumption range for the commercial. Have we got that number 4? Yeah, for commercial. The increases as you go from step to step is very small. There's a 50-cent increase above 5,000 gallons. When you go from above 5,000 gallons, from 475 to 525. Only a 60-cent increase from 25,000 gallons once you go above 25,000 gallons, from 525 to 585. And then an incredible increase of, wow, 1 penny when the rates go above 60,000 gallons. This is not conservation-based rate setting. No one in their right minds should believe that this commercial rate structure encourages much in the way of water conservation. So the new rate structure fails to meet the objective of being conservation-based, as specifically called out in the town manager's report. But let's look at the second objective. Are the rates equitable? Well, let's go, if we look at the slide 4 again, we will see that certainly the base charge is equitable. Anybody with a water meter less than 1 inch is going to get charged the same base charge, and that's perfectly appropriate. There never should have been a difference in the base charge for customers with the same size water meter to begin with. So now we look at the rates themselves. If we go from in 1,000-gallon increments, if we go from 0 to 5, you'll see, oh, well, are these rates equitable? Why would a residential customer only have to pay $2.10, excuse me, for the first 5,000 gallons, but a commercial customer have to pay $4.75? No reason. But then we get to above 5,000 gallons, and now the numbers switch. Now we have a situation where residential customers have to start paying more, 40 cents more per thousand, 565 versus 525, than a commercial customer. Again, what is the reason? Same meters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No explanation. They just do whatever they want to. Then we get above 25,000 gallons consumption up to 60,000. There, the rate increase, the rate difference is $3.15, and I'll get to that in a minute. That's an important area that I want to talk about, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then lastly, we have a situation where the selectmen, in the case of residential, have specifically say they want to penalize all residential customers who consume more than 60,000 gallons, charge them punitive rates because in their minds, all of those customers must be violating the town regulation regarding use of water, whether it's outdoor watering or et cetera. So there you go. There's no rhyme or reason to these rates other than to make sure that the residential bills are going to be lower than the commercial bills for almost everybody. And who does this disadvantage? The smallest commercial customers, who are being hit with a big charge for conserving and using only a small amount of water, less than 5,000 gallons. Okay, so I do need to point out one other thing regarding these rates. The town manager was reported in the newspaper as saying that commercial ratepayers should not be penalized for using more water prudently. Well, I think that means that he and the selectmen believe that all commercial customers are using their water prudently. And since they are, well, we're going to give them a rate discount or relative to residential rates. But evidently they also believe that all residential customers who consume in the range of 25 to 60,000 gallons, they are wasting water. They consume above 25,000 gallons. So they should be hit with higher rates. I wonder where they get this, the evidence to support these two claims are. Because this isn't really true. And as a matter of fact, there are public documents that the state has put out saying that commercial customers should be able to reduce their water consumption by at least 10% in order to help conserve water. So one should not assume that all commercial customers are using water prudently. Many of them could consume more, and higher rates and higher consumption levels would provide the needed incentive. It is also not true that all residential consumption above 25,000 gallons is wasteful and requires punitive rates. And let's look at some examples. Let's go to slide 5. So, if you calculate, you figure that, despite what the selectmen may think, there are some households in Shrewsbury that have 6, 7, and even 8 persons in the household. Well, if you use the 65 gallon per person day average that the state has for a guideline, and then you calculate what that the amount of consumption that would take on a quarterly basis for those households, you'll see that a 6-person household would consume 35,000 gallons. 7-person household, 41,000 gallons. 8-person household, 47,000 gallons. So they're using, those households, if they were using water reasonably, consuming that amount of water, they would be above 25,000 gallons of water. So, what we have is a situation where these households would have to pay $9 per thousand above 25,000 gallons, which is $3.15 more per thousand than a commercial customer. So, let's go to slide 6, let's take a look at some of the water bills. And focus on the last 3. The first 3 actually show how commercial customers are disadvantaged. They have substantially higher water bills than residential customers in the range of 3,000 to 7,000 gallons when there's no reason for it. But I want to focus on the last 3 lines of the slide, which shows consumption at 35, 41, and 47,000 gallons consumption for a residential customer. As you can see, they would have to pay substantially more. In the case of 35,000, it would be over 10% more, and then it goes up even higher at the 41,000 and 47,000 consumption levels. And those consumption amounts are reasonable for larger families. Why are they being penalized? It makes no sense. So what's the solution? Many rate scenarios can be developed that would both encourage conservation and be more equitable. So I'm going to show you slides 7 and 8. Shows one of the alternate rate scenarios that I developed, comparing it to the rates that were proposed on April 10th. The revenues from my alternate rates added to the new base charges for every size water meter would yield the needed revenues. So slide 7, is that slide 7? Let's just make sure. Slide 7, so this is the residential scenario. Okay, so what this do? My scenario leaves the rate for 0 to 5,000 gallons the same at $2.10 per thousand. It reduces the rate for 5,000 to 25,000 gallons by 35 cents to $5.30. So, and then it reduces the rate for 25 to 60,000 gallons. People, you know, the consumption level at which people with 6, 7, and 8 in the household would reasonably expect it to consume, it reduces that by $1 from $9 to $8. And I left the $14 rate alone. And the commercial rates, let's go to slide 8, excuse me. Slide 8, my scenario would reduce the commercial rate for 0 to 5,000 gallons to $2.10, just the same as for the residential customers. And again, there's no logical reason for there to be a difference other than a different water meter. My scenario for commercial would increase the commercial rate for 5,000 to 25,000 gallons by just 5 cents to $5.30, again, in order to make the rate the same as the rate for residential customers at this level. The result of these two changes would be a significant decrease in the water bills of commercial customers up to 25,000 gallons of consumption. My scenario would increase commercial rates at the top two consumption ranges, but these rates would still be substantially lower than my residential rates, and they would still be lower than the top commercial rates of most surrounding towns. To summarize, what do all these details about the new rates and alternate rates have to do with my petition article? They are compelling arguments in favor of my article. The Selectmen's new rates do not encourage commercial water conservation. The Selectmen's new rates are not fair to many ratepayers. And there are many other rate structures that would A, encourage commercial as well as residential conservation, and B, would be more fair and equitable. Therefore, since the Selectmen refuse to enact more equitable rates, and since they fail to understand how much more unfair their November rates would have been if enacted, town meeting should act to provide the needed oversight. My article will provide this oversight. So, and I just want to say again, it's very important for people to understand that Shrewsbury is unlike almost any other town in Massachusetts in that it chooses to charge residential customers higher rates at reasonable consumption levels than corresponding commercial customers. I mean, you can go to any other town, neighboring town, and you will see, and including Worcester. Worcester has a single rate. It's the same for both residential and commercial. Westboro has different ascending rate structure, but the residential and commercial rates are the same, and Westboro's commercial rates are higher than Shrewsbury's, even after these increases that I'm suggesting. So the bottom line is we need oversight over the Selectmen in order to help them out with setting proper water rates. That's about it for today's show. With that, I thank you for watching, and goodbye.